So fear of failure is an interesting thing, really. We can reduce it to quite technical analysis. I mean, it's born of the concept of diminishing marginal utility. When we're at the top of our diminishing marginal utility curve, we're looking over the edge at everything we have to lose. And the problem with diminishing marginal utility is that there's not that much to gain. And interestingly, although poker takes place in a casino, and therefore it's often a victim or a subject, if you like, of appreciating marginal utility, that is the urge to gamble, massive upside, limited downside, you'd be surprised how many people do suffer a fear of failure when they're playing poker, especially at the higher levels. The more money is involved, the more emotional we become. So what we're trying to do, I would argue, in poker and business and life, is to try and have a proportionate utility curve. That is to say, where the upsides are proportionate to the upsides and the downsides are proportionate to the downsides. And it's a oft repeated remedy, but the answer, the way that we do that, is by thinking about the long term. Because the more that we think about the long term, the less the downside in the here and now matters. Fear of failure is a product of placing so much emphasis on this particular decision that we don't see it as part of a continuum of lots of decisions like it. So as big as the decision to, I don't know, move premises is in your business right now, in 20 years' time you won't think about it. You may have only moved premises 3 or 4 times, but it's just part of a number of huge decisions that you make. Each one felt massive at the time, but which, with the benefit of hindsight and distance, stops being so. So fear of failure, I would say, as I say, it's the remedy to so many things, but it's thinking long term and putting it in proportion. So last night we played poker with some of the Risk Minds attendees, so with me dealing and them playing. And just to put this in context, I've done that between 700 and 800 times at different events around the world, different levels from different organisations. And I would say that last night's players were among the top 3 groups that I've ever done that with, in all sorts of different ways, actually. First of all, a very prosaic level of just picking up the game, the rudiments again, the checking and the betting, the calling, etc. But more importantly, the strategy, what we're trying to do, executing it excellently. And that's partly because people at this conference obviously think in terms of risk. But what was interesting was they weren't, not visibly at least, they weren't doing calculations in an overt way. Their intuitive grasp, their card sense is what it's sometimes described, was excellent. And that, of course, is a product of thinking about these things so much every day that even when displaced into a different realm, their natural sensibilities are so much more heightened. So I guess the theme of my presentation today, it starts and ends with this concept that it's only because tomorrow is uncertain that today has any meaning for us at all. And what I'm trying to do with that is to present this idea, which is a recurring theme throughout my work, that uncertainty, frustrating, annoying, beguiling as it is also necessary. A necessary evil, you might say. I would say in many ways a necessary good. At the basic level of life, because of that, because it's only because we don't know what's going to happen in the future that today has any excitement, that there's any frisson, that there's any tension, that there's any passion. If you imagine a world for a moment where you know all those things, there's none of that. Life is only worth living in any sense at all because in some level we don't know what's going to happen next. So there's that, but forget all that wishy-washy stuff. Just think about it in hard economics terms. In fact, something that someone said today in one of the sessions will stay with me, which is that money that is not at risk at all has no inherent return. If you keep money under your mattress, and there's plenty of risk actually associated with that, there's no return there. Why would anyone offer you a return on money? I mean, even inflationary, if it's not at risk. Now, that's an interesting statement because, again, I go around the world talking to people about risk, and most organisations and companies, and certainly individuals, want to try and eradicate it in all sense. Well, what that statement does is really turn that desire on its head, and it says, look, the only way you're going to get return and value is by engaging with this thing called risk, or uncertainty, if you like. And in fact, I'd go even further than that, because my point is that The only way to make profit in an organisation is because other people can't guarantee that they would make the same profit. If everyone could guarantee they'd all make the same profit, they'd all just dive into that market. You know, I'd go off and set up an investment fund or make paint or whatever it was where there was latent profit to be made. It's uncertainty that creates value for all of us, and therefore we should regard it as more of a friend than we do.